Well, meanwhile, tensions between the White House and the military in the US are growing. The Defence Secretary Mark Esper now going on the record to say that he does not agree with bringing in the army to deal with demonstrators as Donald Trump had suggested. However, Esper went on to decide to keep hundreds of active duty soldiers in Washington DC region rather than sending them home. Well, to take a closer look at this side of the story, we're joined by our international affairs editor, Armin Georgian. Armin, the President and his Defence Secretary not seemingly on the same page on this issue.
No, the Defence Secretary certainly broke ranks there with his comments about the question of using troops to quell unrest. Since then, Secretary Esper has rowed back those comments. He seems to have changed his line. He must have been sort of brought back into line by other members of the Trump team. But what's interesting is that Mark Esper's comments don't come in a vacuum. You also have James Mattis, a former defense secretary who worked under Donald Trump, left the administration over differences on Syria. He has launched an extraordinary attack on his former boss for Trump's handling of this particular crisis following the killing of George Floyd, and not just James Mattis as well. It's if you look at other former top brass, such as retired General John Allen, who used to command U.S. forces in Afghanistan, Mike Mullen, the former head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, all these former very senior military officials who one assumes still have contacts within the Pentagon. And so the question has been raised, are all these officials, and perhaps Esper himself, although he's still currently serving, are they somehow channeling concerns and frustrations within the Pentagon itself, perhaps military chiefs in the Pentagon who are not authorized to speak out in public, but are somehow channeling something through people like James Mattis? And if so, what would that mean if Donald Trump did indeed actually give the order for the military to go in?
Quite a high-level criticism then, Armin, of Donald Trump's handling of this crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, whether it's working or not, clearly this kind of very strong, pro-law enforcement line that works with Trump's base, whether it works with independent and suburban voters is a very moot point. We'll have to see, obviously, in the presidential election whether that kind of line has worked or not. In terms of the immediate situation, Trump obviously could go further. He does have the power to use the military in certain circumstances, although there's been a lot of debate about exactly how far his powers extend. The military has been used before in somewhat comparable situations. In 1992, in the Los Angeles riots, for example, George H.W. Bush authorized the use of the military, but only when the governor in question requested the use of the troops. This, of course, is a very explosive situation, and one has to ask, would using soldiers even work? After all, they're trained to fight wars, not to police civilians, and all it takes really is one incident to go badly wrong for potentially the whole face and nature of this protest movement to change.
Armin, thanks indeed for that. Armin Georgian there, our international affairs editor. Well, meanwhile, for the first time